How do you handle Jamison Williams in Fantasy Pros drafts after his big suspension? Where should you be taking Javonte Williams in your FFPC best ball drafts? And is Saquon Barkley a guy you should actually move prior to FFPC rookie drafts? Plus, Mohamed Elhussieny, a winner of 5 FFPC league titles, drops by to talk about Ramondre Stevenson, why he has avoided rookies in the Fantasy Pros Championship drafts, and more. We've got a great show for you. Dave Terpoli is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Under pressure, I've seen greater men than these lessons.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all you Balkaholics. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and of course, my co-host, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott, is actually off tonight. So I want to welcome in the co-hostess fill-in with the mostest. It is Dave Terpoli. You follow him on Twitter at Dave Terp. Dave, I got to tell you a story here, and this involves you.
I love stories.
You already know the story. So Farrell texted me, and he said, "Listen, Balky, I'm going to be traveling this weekend. Is there any chance we can do the show a different day?" I said, "No. We already have guests booked this day. Let me see if Terp can actually fill in." And he's like, "Okay." So I texted you. I said, "Hey, man, any chance you can fill in this week on Friday?" You text me. Let me check to make sure that, because I'm going out of town on Saturday. Let me just check to make sure I'm good on that. And I'm like, okay. And before I could even text Farrell back, literally 10 seconds later, I'm in. And you were in. It was that fast.
Never a doubt. Just got to get permission from the boss, and we were good to go.
And that was the quickest. I've never got permission from my boss that fast ever. And you got it. It was instantaneous. So I'm glad to have you on tonight. How much have you researched the NFL draft? How geeked up are you? Because we are less than a week away, my friend.
I'm pretty excited. I think the class is very undervalued. I think there's a lot of talent in the draft, and we'll definitely be talking about that tonight.
We definitely will, for sure. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to lecture you about what we think of Tua Tagovailoa's recent retirement comments, whether Zay Flowers is being pumped up too much in FFPC drafts, and then 5-time FFPC league champion Mohamed Elhussieny is going to drop in to talk about the Chiefs' backfield. He's going to talk about Dalton Kincaid out of Utah and much more. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, the show is at HSFF Hour. I'm at Eric Balkman. Always check out Terp's Twitter page, at Dave Terp. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets, all the emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on at the end of the show tonight. Thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend Rob. This is your final warning, final warning, because we got, I think, less than 5 dozen dynasty orphans out there. Many of them are priced at $1. You can get a $12.50 dynasty league right now.
Some good teams too.
For $1, Terp. It's insane. Which is crazy that we have these teams available. But we're looking at the start of the NFL draft coming up on Thursday. Here we are on Friday before. And these dynasty orphans are going fast and furious. I know we had a bunch of them scooped up again today. You can adopt the dynasty orphan right now at myffpc.com. Those discounted teams are available at the 250, the 500, the 750 and the 1250 levels right now. The 77s are sold out, and the 2500s are sold out. You can get those as low as $1 at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. As a reminder, we already were offering startup drafts pre-NFL draft and post-NFL draft for $100. Now we have them at the $250 level. So if you want to join in and get some action going with the $100 and $250 Dynasty Maiden startups, you can do so at myffpc.com. The biggest news we've had all season is not only are we offering a $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event for the second straight year, we are also offering for the first time ever a $1 million grand prize in the Fantasy Pros Championship. First time we've ever done this because it's a $1 million grand prize. You only have to plunk down $350 for this, which is worth it. Tremendous value. You want to buy up 3 teams, you're going to get a $50 discount on the third team. If you wanted to take advantage of the early bird promotion we have going on, we encourage that type of behavior. Register now by June 1st, so a little bit over a month, and draft that team by June 15th. Boom, free FFPC $35 league credit to your account. We'll do that up to 3 times as well. That's myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share the video with everybody you know, and get notified so we can continue to bring on great guests like we're having tonight with Mohamed Elhussieny. You know, it's one of those things, Terp, not a lot of people, I shouldn't say not a lot of people are drafting right now, but it's difficult to find people who are drafting right now who want to talk about it because 100%. Everybody's very protective of what they've been doing so far.
They don't want their secrets to get out, especially, now coming into the draft next week. I mean, it's all about landing spots next week, and these guys want to get ahead of them before, they land somewhere. So a lot of these guys are real quiet up in the next couple of weeks.
It's true. It's very true. And we'll kick things off today in Las Vegas. Raiders GM Dave Ziegler says Josh Jacobs has not yet signed his franchise tender tag, and he will not participate in the voluntary offseason program. This according to Paul Gutierrez, who covers the Las Vegas Raiders. This is his Twitter account. Jacobs will not be allowed to participate in the voluntary offseason program until he signs that franchise tag, or until the Raiders and him, if they do at all, agree on a long-term agreement. Now, he previously said that he's willing to play on the franchise tag, but that's only if the Raiders surround other talent around him on offense and perhaps on defense as well. Now, as a response to that, the Raiders added Jacoby Myers, which we'll get into later on in the show. And they are working through the situation, according to Ziegler, with Jacobs right now. But he didn't seem concerned that this is going to be a big deal. If he does play on the tag and hits the open market for the season, Terp, this is good news for fantasy players. Right now, in the Fantasy Pros Championship, shout out to Darren Armani at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter, fantasymojo.com. Anytime we cite FFPC ADP data on this show, it's always due to him. And I'll tell you right now, Terp, that in the Fantasy Pros Championship, he's running back 8 at the 211 right now. If you were drafting at the end of the second round, would you be scared off to maybe go with somebody like Tony Pollard or Derrick Henry or even Breece Hall, all running backs that are going after him in the Fantasy Pros Championship? Would you go with any of those guys over Jacobs given this franchise tag situation right now?
The only player out of those 4 you just mentioned that I would take over him is Tony Pollard. I think that situation, unless Dallas goes, this week it's crazy and takes Robinson or Gibbs early, I think Pollard probably will move up draft boards. Besides that, though, I think if you're a fantasy football owner, you do not want Josh Jacobs to sign a contract. You want him to play on that franchise tag because you want them to run him into the ground. You want him to do exactly what they did to him last year, just feed him every carry, every game, nobody else. And also this week you have to watch the draft because I'm sure the Raiders will just do Raider type of things and draft a guy as a replacement, which they should. But you don't want him to sign a long. If he signs a long-time contract, I'd be very, very worried about that situation because they'll have to protect their asset then. He's not going to get 100% of the snaps and 100% of the carries and, all the catches that he got. So I'd be worried. But he's definitely a guy that I've been warming up to a lot more. But the news will be next week. Obviously, you got to pay attention to what they do in the draft. And then, again, I don't want him to sign a contract. I want them to run him into the ground.
So if that is the case, and that's the way that they'll behave, or at least that's the way you think they're going to behave when you're drafting right now here on April 21st. Zamir White is out there at running back 74. He's going at the 1809. Terp, is there value there? And Zamir
There's definitely value. I mean, before the NFL draft, there's always you got to take some shots on guys. a lot of these guys who, if they don't add a rookie next week, Zamir White is going to move up draft boards just because he's pretty much the only guy there. So I don't see them adding a veteran. It doesn't seem like a spot for a veteran, not one of the ones like the Fournettes or the Hunts of the world. So I could see, Zamir White moving up draft boards easily. And if you get him now in drafts, in the 18th round, like you said, it's going to be a value when he's moving up to 14, 15, maybe higher in some cases.
Get your shares of Zamir White. Now, I want to get into this Jameson Williams discussion, but before we do, Terp, we have Flies Beats, a longtime hanger-outer and commenter of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour hanging out in YouTube right now. He says he wants to know, how do you determine ADP value compared with lineup stack value? He goes on to tell us this. He's on the clock at 10:10. Jared Goff is sitting there. He does not have any hookups to Jared Goff. It's a round and a half of value if he drafts him as his quarterback too. He already has Najee Harris. He already has Johnson with the thought of a late backup quarterback stack with Ritter. I'm trying to figure out which Johnson that would be. What Johnson do you think that would be? Deontay?
I guess. But who's his quarterback one?
Well, he doesn't say in here. Maybe he can chime in on this. But his question is, and this is more of a broad topic that I think we can answer for all the viewers here tonight. When does draft value trump roster construction, or is a 3-quarterback build in thought with getting the value in Goff with Ritter a couple rounds later for the stack? Justin Herbert, here it is. Justin Herbert is his quarterback one. But we can obviously answer his situation here, Terp. But if we expand this to just sort of a draft philosophical question, I think it boils down to this: when does draft value trump
What's
roster?
The format's the number one question. I mean, if it's
he doesn't say
it's a
here.
Fantasy Pros Championship,
it's got to be some sort of super flex, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not necessarily. It can't be a super flex. Goff is still out there in the 10th round. It can't be a super flex. It's got to be like Fantasy Pros. Yeah.
If it's Fantasy Pros, I think it's a flawed. I mean, you're taking Herbert, you're banking Herbert. If you want to take a late quarterback, somebody with some upside, I mean, Goff might be the one, but I'm not taking a 10th round quarterback when I already have Herbert. If it's a best ball thing, I mean, it might be a little different, but we know my rules with stacking. I mean, you missed out on Jameson Williams, you missed out on St. Brown. I mean, are you really going to stack Goff with Marvin Jones? I feel like there's other options that are just as potentially explosive. Like you said, Kenny Pickett with Deontay Johnson type of situation that makes more sense. There is no way ever in the main event or Fantasy Pros that I'm drafting 3 quarterbacks on any team ever.
All right, so just
Superflex, obviously it's different because you got to get them early, but my guess is it's not.
This is an FFPC best ball, he said. So I'm assuming 20 rounds here. 3-quarterback build in thought with getting Goff and Ritter in the couple rounds later for the stack. Is there something to be said for that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's some potential in it. I think I'd more stay with just going with Herbert. You drafted him early enough and then just taking one other guy. I mean, if you want to sprinkle in like a Mike White or somebody like that as like a wild card, like late, just to have a third guy, somebody with like some late season potential, or obviously Tua can get hurt any week. But yeah, he's not. I wouldn't go Goff naked. I mean, there's just no upside in that, in my opinion.
We got Mohamed Elhussieny hanging out in the green room, noshing on all the great snacks and drinks we provided for him. Before we bring him on here shortly, we want to get to the news of the day here, Terp. And this is big. The NFL has suspended Jameson Williams 6 games for violating the NFL's gambling policy, according to Ian Rappaport on Twitter. Now, both Williams and wide receiver Stanley Berryhill got 6-game suspensions. Fellow wide receiver Quintez Cephas and Lions safety CJ Moore got year-long bans. They have been released by the Detroit Lions. Williams and Berryhill reportedly bet on college football games, which is allowed by the NFL, but they did so from league facilities, which is prohibited. Although my buddy, the commish, Bryce, was telling me today, the rules on this are very nebulous as far as, whether they actually violated any policy or not. Maybe more to come on that. Now, the Lions, we're going to have Jameson Williams coming back at the start of the season. Remember, he had a torn ACL coming into his rookie season. He did not play until week 13 of last year. Caught 1 pass for 41 yards and a touchdown. He was expected to be huge in 2023. Now he's going to have to wait until mid-October at the earliest. they're going to be able to participate in everything as far as preseason stuff goes, OTAs, training camp, and everything like that. However, they will not be eligible until week 7 of the NFL season. Terp, Jameson Williams, wide receiver 30 at the 603 prior to the suspension. Where would you take him now?
I mean, I was a big fan, so this is definitely not news I wanted to see today.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's a stupid rule. Let's just get that out of the way. We both could probably agree there. Dumb rule. I mean, if you bet on NFL, that's different, but college football shouldn't even be a question, especially with gambling being legal now.
And I'll interrupt you here on this, Terp. And I'm saying that I have no corroboration on this, but the way I understand it is to bet on their cell phone, like on a FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever account, to bet on their cell phone if they would have gone off property, 200 feet maybe from where they were standing when they made these bets. Then I don't know, geolocation or whatever. But if they would have done that, right, exactly. If they would have moved like another 200 and 300 feet, then there would be no suspension involved at all, which to me, it seems like a flawed rule. I've done some research on this. I can't find anything on whether they can appeal the suspension or not. And I don't know if that's the case. But as of right now, as we're operating, I'm with you. I think it's a dumb rule. But as we're operating right now, it seems like week 7 at the earliest for Jameson Williams. And now we have to figure out how far we're moving him down our draft boards.
It's a crushing blow in drafts. I mean, first of all, I think this makes St. Brown a clear-cut first-round pick. I don't even think it's a question at this point. But for Jameson Williams, I mean, best ball, redraft, dynasty. I mean, you keep going down the list. I mean, every format, he's in trouble. I mean, where does he fall? Obviously, we don't have the data on that yet with drafts, probably going on today. We'll probably see like next week where he falls to. But like, he still has that ability to just break a slate. But where do you take him? 8th round, 9th round, 10th? I mean, that's probably where he's going to fall to. And I think he's a solid pick there, but you better be good at receiver to be taking that shot because you can't waste a pick like that. It's just a bummer because I was really, really high on them this year. The drafts I've done so far, he's definitely been a popular target of mine. Obviously he's going to fall down draft boards. He's definitely a guy I wouldn't stay away from, but just a bummer.
Terp, quick would you rather on this. Let's move him down the list a little bit, Jameson Williams. Would you rather have Jameson Williams or Kadarius Toney?
Wow. I mean, you have to pick Toney, man, I'm not saying it's like clear cut.
Right.
I mean, the only reason is availability, but we don't even know if he's going to be available.
Well, and I'm moving down about a round and a half here on that. Yeah. So you're saying Toney. Let's move down a little bit further. Kadarius Toney. All right, not Kadarius Toney. Jameson Williams or George Pickens?
George Pickens. I mean, it's just, do I think Jameson Williams? I mean, Jameson Williams has top 10 ability, in that offense with his, big playability, but being out 6 games, man, it's a huge gamble in formats. You're just hoping that he gets you're afloat by week 6, and he just hits the ground running, which is no guarantee. I mean, we don't even know if Jared Goff's going to be the quarterback by then.
Right,
I mean,
exactly. Yes,
the Lions, they're the popular, sexy pick of the offseason to win a division and all that stuff, but like, it's still Jared Goff and it's still the Lions. So like, I don't know.
Let's see if we can bottom out here. I'm going to keep moving down. Would you rather, in the Fantasy Pros Championship, would you rather draft Jameson Williams or Brandon Cooks? Which one would you rather have?
This is where I draw the line. I think it's Jameson Williams.
All right, so I dipped down a little bit on this one, Terp. Let's move up a little bit, and I dipped down because I don't know the proper pronunciation of the Washington Commanders receiver, whether it's Jahan or Jahan Dotson. Who would you rather
whatever
draft?
You want. Dotson in a heartbeat.
Dotson. Okay, there we go.
Not even a question.
So according to Terp right now, who is drafting in these formats, Jameson Williams was going at the 603. Terp is putting him now as a drop of about 2 rounds because Dotson was going at the 802. Cooks is going at the 805. A 2-round drop would make him at the 803. So it's a 2-round drop right now as we look at it at this very moment. We'll see how the FFPC drafters do in the Fantasy Pros Championship. All the best ball leagues we have going on this weekend at myffpc.com. I have so much more to get to with you, Terp. We're gonna put a pin in it because I want to welcome in our guest tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This is a guy who's been playing fantasy football for more than 2 decades, and in the FFPC for just the last 3 years. Already, he started assembling several high-stakes dynasty teams. For the first time, he is already a 5-time FFPC league champion. Please welcome onto the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Mr. Mohamed Elhussieny. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mohamed. We really appreciate this.
Thank you, guys. No, it's been great. I'm looking forward to talking some football.
This is crazy for you because you were telling me off air, you were just filling a spot in one of your buddies' leagues. And now all of a sudden here, you join the FFPC, 3 years go by, and now you're on a fantasy football podcast the week before the NFL draft. You have all these dynasty teams. You've been drafting all these fantasy pros teams. It's whirlwind for you right now. And I feel like you have had some sort of baptism by fire where you've learned a lot in order to become a league champion in all these leagues.
Well, I'm trying. I mean, I'm learning. There's a lot of sharp minds in this industry, as you know, both of you included. So I'm doing my best and just having a blast. But yeah, it kind of started just kind of on a whim. My buddy needed someone to fill in for someone who dropped out of his league, and I kind of came in second that year, and I've just been hooked ever since. Had a heartbreaking.
They're the best stories.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
absolute best stories.
Absolutely, I'll remember it to the day I die. It's like I traded, if you know this name, Warwick Dunn.
Oh yeah, Florida State, baby. Yeah, love it.
Mid-season, I traded him away. And in the finals, he had his all-time greatest game, 3-touchdown game, and that's the reason I lost. So yeah, it's one of those things that I was hooked ever since. So yeah.
And Mo, you got to wonder, if you had won the league that first year, would you be as focused on trying to win all these championships? Because right away you found out how hard it was to win. Yeah, and then you got bit by the bug.
The heartbreak stays with you. So, you always want to come back the next year and do better.
You told me this off air, but inform the viewers and the listeners, when you're not winning these FFPC leagues, what are you doing for a living?
So I'm a teacher, a high school teacher. I've been teaching for about 20 years in the Detroit area, and teach high school math, mostly 9th through 11th grade.
Nice. And God bless you. My wife is a teacher, and she's been a teacher now for my goodness.
Tough grade too.
15, 20 years or whatever. It's been. God bless you. We have a lot of appreciation.
You know what? I've been very lucky. The kids are I get along with the kids pretty well. So, I've enjoyed it. It's been a great experience.
Mo, let me ask you this right off the top. Are you a Lions fan?
Oh, unfortunately, yes. I mean,
unfortunately, you're division champs this year.
Oh, hold on. Are they? Because now we just got this bombshell, Terp, with Jameson Williams, which you and I just discussed. Mo, what are you doing? I don't know. I've not looked what shares you have of Jameson Williams this year, but what's your instant reaction to this? Because Williams, I think everybody, all of us high stakes players thought that Williams is going to take a huge step forward this year. And now it's going to be a little bit stunted given that he's not going to be able to participate for the first 6 games of the season.
Oh, I think that's huge news. And I think it's going to have a dramatically negative effect on the Lions. I mean, I think that's not a good situation. I've been trying to acquire Jameson Williams, particularly in Dynasty. Not very hard, or it was very hard to do, but the reality is, I think he was going to be a big piece of the offense. So I think that's a pretty big blow to, winning the division. I'm not sure how that's going to play out at this point. So
for Dynasty and Terp, I know you're going to ask about Mike Gesicki here in a second, but just real quick, last question for you here before we turn that over to Terp. Mo, when you look at Jameson Williams in Dynasty leagues right now, do you think you can get a deal on him given the suspension, or is it not long enough for you to be able to cash in on grabbing Jameson Williams at a discount?
You know what I think? I think people who have been holding Jameson Williams this long are going to probably continue to hold, even with this news. I mean, it's they've had him for so long at this point. Why sell him at the lowest point? You're not going to get a fair return. So I think pretty much he's still going to be hard to acquire, just because the people who invested draft capital on him, they're not going to give him up on him right now. So I'll keep trying though, for sure. No doubt. He's a very talented player. So.
He sure is. So we'll start off with a couple questions. Mike Gesicki, New England. What's your expectation? You think he's a fantasy football piece, or he's just?
I actually have kind of high hopes for Mike Gesicki. I will preface this by saying I've been a big fan of Mike Gesicki's just profile in general. He's a very athletic guy. He's very good at contested catches. I think that will be very beneficial in the red zone in particular. I think the problem with Gesicki is that he's never really been given the opportunity to like play to his strengths. And I think if I read this correctly, the New England has kind of already come out and said they view him as like a hybrid, receiver / tight end. So I think they are going to use him in the right way. And when I think of that New England receiving core, I can't say there's anybody that scares me away from Mike Gesicki either.
Nobody.
So, yeah, I think he's got a real shot to put up some decent points. Solid tight end 2, possibly low tight end 1 numbers. That would be great. And particularly where you're getting him, I don't know what his ADP is, but I feel like you could get him for pretty cheap. So the investment's pretty low at that.
His main competition as far as tight end goes is Hunter Henry. And this is a player that people are very excited about when the Patriots got him and Jonnu Smith. The excitement has waned because Hunter Henry is now tight end 34 in the Fantasy Pros Championship at the 1906. Meanwhile, you look at a guy like Mike Gesicki, who is going now at way higher than that, guys. Mike Gesicki's ADP, tight end 18 at the 1201. So you can get him. And let's think about this here for a second, because I think this is underreported. New England needs a receiver. They need some perimeter help. Jacoby Myers is now in Las Vegas. So that guy that was commanding all those targets out there is no longer going to be there. Even if because the free agency is picked clean right now. There's they're not going to add anybody that's going to be making a lick of difference right now for the course of the entire season. If they draft somebody, whether it's a tight end, whether it's a receiver, they're not going to be an instant guy that's going to help this offense out. Mac Jones is going to have a new offensive coordinator this year. We don't know if Mac Jones is going to last the season, but we do know this is Mike Gesicki, a guy that went to Miami that had a pretty good season, and then Mike McDaniel took over, a guy who you need to block if you're a tight end in his offense. Gesicki doesn't block. As a result, he was off the field quite a bit, and I think you're totally right, Mo. His strengths have not been accentuated in the NFL long-term, maybe one season, but now he goes to New England. They obviously like him there. I think Mike Gesicki is being undervalued at the 1201 at the tight end 18. He makes for an excellent number 3 tight end in the Fantasy Pros Championship. And if you wait on tight end, he can make for a decent number 2 tight end in that format as well. I want to stick, Mo, with the New England Patriots for this next question. How concerned are you? And I feel like I brought this up with a lot of high-stakes players. Ramondre Stevenson, I know you have him on some of your Fantasy Pros Championship teams. The NFL draft is going to start in less than a week. At this time next week, we could see the New England Patriots with a brand new running back on their roster. They could draft somebody, they might not. How concerned are you about your Ramondre Stevenson shares in the Fantasy Pros Championship, knowing the NFL draft is going to be coming up here pretty quick?
Yeah, I think my concern level with Ramondre is lower than consensus. I love Ramondre. He's just a big guy, can catch passes. He's the coaching staff seem to really trust him in pretty much any situation. He's going to get some goal line carries. One thing that stood out to me though last year was, New England's running back room is pretty deep already. They had some pretty talented running backs, and Ramondre did miss a game or two last year, and those running backs came in and performed very, very well. But what I took away from that was when Ramondre was healthy, he took over the backfield again. So he's already kind of held off rookie running backs. So I feel like I think there's a good chance that whoever they are going to draft, if they do draft somebody, I think he has the skill set to kind of hold them off. I will say that if it's Bijan Robinson, then that probably isn't the case.
All bets are off. Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's fearing that right now.
But why would they do something like that? Who knows what New England is going to do? Bill Belichick is, he's unpredictable, but
I thought they had at some point have an offensive coordinator last year, and instead they had a special teams guy and a defensive guy running the offense all year. So you're right, Bo. Like, we don't know what Bill Belichick and the Patriots are capable of, and that's what's so maddening about this.
Right. No, absolutely. But, I think I'm a kind of a believer in his skill set. I think he's a wonderful player. I think he's already shown that he can be successful, and I can't see why they would necessarily go away from that. So
Deshaun Watson's a popular breakout pick this year. Are FFPC players sleeping on David Njoku? I mean, is he a guy that can get up in the top 5 tight ends?
Ooh, top 5. That might be a little high, but I do think people are sleeping a little bit on the Browns in general. And I think they're kind of being undervalued in general. David Njoku, kind of like Mike Gesicki, I've always been a big fan of his athleticism, very good tight end. What I like about Njoku, though, is that he's always on the field. His snap share is
100%.
extremely high. He's running routes on most of the snaps that he's playing. And I would anticipate what I'm thinking is going to happen is that Cleveland is probably going to throw a little bit more than they have in the past. At least that's what it seems like. There's some rumbling that may happen. They may open up the offense. I think for a guy who's on the field basically all the time running routes, that should open up a few more targets for him. And additionally, if you do think about where they used him in the field, they did throw in the red zone to him. He was a pretty big red zone target for them. So I definitely feel like he's got a shot at top 5 might be a little high, but I definitely feel like somewhere in the 6 to 7 range, he definitely has that in his potential.
David Njoku right now going off at tight end 10, ladies and gentlemen, in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Right behind Evan Engram, right behind Pat Freiermuth, and right ahead of Dalton Schultz and Chig Okonkwo. Right now, David Njoku, 7-10 in the Fantasy Pros Championship. I do want to talk to you about, Mo, here, the Kansas City Chiefs backfield. Now, I know you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on a few of your dynasty teams with the FFPC. As I look at the Fantasy Pros ADP here on fantasymojo.com, the running back situation, Isaiah Pacheco is currently being drafted in the mid-5th round as running back 18. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back 63 at the 15-16 turn. Those are the only 2 running backs from Kansas City that are being drafted. Jerick McKinnon, obviously a free agent right now. Who is the Chiefs running back that you want to own? And we'll focus this on redraft right now. And if you want to expand it out to Dynasty, I'll leave that up to you. But if you're drafting into the Fantasy Pros Championship early, who's the Chiefs running back you want to have? And even if, and I'll piggyback on this, even if that's the guy to have right now, what are your concerns about what's going to happen in the NFL draft coming up next weekend?
Yeah, I'll tell you honestly, this one is tough to me. I feel like that backfield seems just like a mess to me, and I would tend to stay away from it if I could. I have been taking Clyde Edwards because he's practically free. Nobody wants him. And as of this moment, I would anticipate he will be a Kansas City Chief, potentially catching passes, maybe in the Jerick McKinnon role. Who knows? And he could probably provide some value. But with that being said, if I'm talking redraft, I'm probably going to, if I have to choose between the 2, I'm probably picking Isaiah Pacheco. And I know a lot of people are saying, he was a 7th round draft pick. There's a lot of worry about him kind of getting washed out because there's not a lot of draft capital. But every time I hear that, I can't help but think, how many 7th round picks not only played, but played very well in the Super Bowl the previous year. And I can't think of one, really. I can't think of one ever. So I do think they showed that they trusted him in the biggest game of the year. I feel like I don't know why what would make them go away from that. So if I'm thinking redraft, I would probably have to say Pacheco. But like I said, I do think the 5th round might be a little rich for me because I just feel like there's just too much uncertainty with that backfield for me to really have a solid take on that.
Let me add on this before we talk more rookies in the Fantasy Pros drafts. Well, when you talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is he a guy that's going to make it through? Because obviously we're going to have rookie drafts here coming up. Is he a guy that's going to make it through on these teams? I mean, are you going to find a spot for him on these on these dynasty drafts you have with the FFPC?
In dynasty?
In dynasty, because you said, and you're right, he's basically free right now. But is he going to be the type of guy that you're going to try to find a way to keep him on your roster all the way to the start of the season?
Yes, I will. I think he's shown flashes that he can be good in the NFL. I think that he will find a home eventually. I think in some ways it might benefit him to leave Kansas City, start somewhere else. I think that might be
Cincinnati with Burrow.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be ideal. And I know Burrow's a big fan of him, so that would be perfect. So, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm holding on to him with the hopes that he can find a new home possibly and kind of regain some value in that way.
I've heard a rumor. You've done a bunch of Fantasy Pros championship drafts already, that you're avoiding drafting rookies. Why?
Yes, no, that's definitely true. But I think that's probably more just due to the time. It's very early. We got a long way till football. So I will say this. I'm not enamored by any one specific player this year. I feel like outside of Bijan and Jackson Smith and Jigba, I can't say that I'm so enamored with any player that I just have to have them on my team no matter where they go. So I feel like at this point in the season, I've been avoiding them mostly just because I'm more curious where they're going to land. And I think I can make a more informed decision at that point as to where I want to take them.
I'll follow up with that. With some great landing spots potentially out there, especially we just mentioned Cincinnati. Do you feel like you'll be behind the 8 ball if you don't take some shots at running back before the draft? Because let's just say Gibbs or, one of the other guys. Probably Carbonet, he's another popular name. And, there's been a couple other names that have been mocked there, I guess. Do you feel like he'll be behind the 8 ball when it comes to the field?
I do. I mean, I definitely feel like there is that risk involved. And, but, I don't necessarily feel like it's a slam dunk. So let's say, for example, Bijan was to go to New England, like we were talking about earlier. I think that would sink both his stock
disaster,
as well.
Complete disaster.
Exactly. So I feel like there's that potential that, you could hit a home run. Jahmyr Gibbs could go to Cincinnati and play, from day one and be a star. I am kind of interested in a few. Zach Charbonnet in particular, I feel like I'm very interested to see where he ends up. Roshan Johnson, I feel like I'm kind of keeping tabs on him. I'd like to know where he's going to go. But right now, without knowing where they're going to land, I feel like, at least in the drafts I've done so far, there's other players that I feel fairly good about as well. And I'll probably start moving those rookies up once I just have a better feeling of, what kind of position they're going to be in. So
So Mo, let me ask you this. And again, I say this all the time. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in regards to the rookies, right? And Terp kind of alluded to this. Do you feel when you're drafting in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now, by avoiding the rookies and being dialed into the situations and what you know about these veterans, you can actually gain a leg up on your competition by letting them take these chances on the rookies and cash in on the value of these veterans whose prices may go up, whose ADP may go up after the NFL draft? Do you think that might be a better way to win the $1 million in the Fantasy Pros Championship? Everybody else is zigging, and here you are zagging.
Well, yeah, that is exactly kind of what I'm trying to do. I do see some value in the same spots that those players are going. And like I said, they're rookies. I know in the last couple of years, we've been lucky to have like the Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons, but it's not a slam dunk that someone's going to walk in and just be a superstar right away. I know Chris Olave did it last year and Garrett Wilson, but there's a lot of risk involved with those picks. And at this point anyway, I there's enough out there in terms of the veterans. I feel like you can get some good value in those same spots. So
Mo, let's go to the YouTube chat right now. We got Flies Beats in here, and he wants to know who your favorite number 2 wide receiver, not named T. Higgins, not named Jalen Waddle, is here. And we'll frame this for redraft. Well, Terp, just easy. You wait. Let's let Mo answer this because there's some options out here. Number 2 wide receiver, Mo, right now for you. No Higgins, no Waddle. Who's your choice here?
It's got to be.
Come on.
It's got to be the Eagles.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. His name is
Devontae Smith.
Smith. I'm sorry. It's got to be Devontae Smith. He's an incredible player. I don't know if I'd even it's like a 1A really, as
Yeah.
opposed to a true number 2. So got to be Devontae.
I'm trying to think who the other options would be here. And obviously, depending upon where DeAndre Hopkins goes, I mean, maybe he ends up being the number 2. I don't know if that's going to happen. You look at Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. I think there's a conversation to be had there. You could look at
Washington.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, like Dotson, would you put him up in this?
Love Dotson.
Okay.
Big Dotson fan.
Are you a big either Jahan or Jahan Dotson? I don't know which one. Dotson from Washington. Mo, do you like him this year?
I do like him, but I mean, if you're asking me who's my favorite number 2, he's not
compared to those three. Not compared to those three, but
all right. So you alluded to a couple of the rookies that you're excited about this year. You mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs. You mentioned Zach Charbonnet, depending upon where he goes to. Are there any other rookies as you look forward to your dynasty rookie drafts that are going to be starting up here in obviously less than a month? Are there any other rookies that you're excited about drafting, excited about to see where they land this year as you watch the NFL draft coming up next week, Mo? Who are the guys you're watching to see where they land because you're very excited about their talent?
Well, I mean, there's been talk about Zay Flowers playing with Mahomes, so that's obviously very exciting. I'd like to see that. He's very talented, and Mahomes can elevate any wide receiver, so that's definitely on my radar. There's been some talk about I don't know. I'm sorry, I just can't think of the names right now, but the receiver that everybody's saying is going to go to the Chargers. From USC,
Jordan Addison.
Oh, Jordan Addison. Yep.
He's interesting to me. He's he could stretch the field, and I think with Herbert, that's a great combination there. So I'm very interested to see if that actually pans out. That could be a great pick there. Kendre Miller, he's someone who I'm keeping tabs on. I think he's an NFL pro ready kind of player. I think he could make an impact right away.
I agree.
Yeah. So those are some names that I'm keeping tabs on, and like you said, I might be making a mistake, Dave, not taking a shot early on these, but I'm playing it safe, I guess, at this point.
Well, you say you're playing, but here's the thing: like you say you're playing it safe, and Mo, I got to tell you, like there's a lot of people that say that you might be living on the edge, right? Because there is so much rookie love right now.
Yeah,
there's so many downfalls in the rookie class.
Right.
I mean.
And Terp, how many times have we had conversations with dynasty players that get so geeked up for these rookie drafts, and then they're still drafting these fantasy pros drafts or the never too early tournament, which obviously closed now because it reached capacity, but people drafting these rookies too early. Now, Mo is not falling into that trap. And Mo, I got to tell you, like, if you're not falling into that trap, you may actually be taking more of a risk here in drafting these veterans that quite frankly could see their ADPs go, significantly higher after 100%. The NFL draft, so I you say playing it safe. I still think there's some risk here that you're taking, which I think you need to do to win $1 million.
For sure. Absolutely.
Terp, why don't I have a follow-up question on the tight ends, but I want you to ask this one about Kincaid and Mayer.
Popular tight end draft, a lot of, positive feedback on the tight end class. Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, which one do you prefer?
For me, it's Michael Mayer, 100%. I think they are both extremely talented players. I just read, though, recently that Kincaid hasn't even been playing football for very long. I think something like 4 years or something. Not the tight end position, but football in general.
Yeah.
And at the tight end position, I feel like, there's already a steep enough learning curve in the NFL. I kind of find that, when I watch Michael Mayer, he seems like a more NFL ready, traditional tight end, still has athletic ability.
Block.
Exactly. So I'm a little nervous about Kincaid's, I guess, how long it might take him to get up to speed and kind of show out in the NFL. So to me, it's Michael Mayer hands down for me.
You touched on some running backs. You touched on some receivers here. Obviously, with Addison, we talked about Mayer and Kincaid just now. But as far as your other rookie, because we're at the FFPC, right? We're contractually obligated to ask you about tight ends because it's 1.5 premium for the position. Do you like any of these other guys after Mayer and Kincaid? Think about Darnell Washington in Georgia, Sam Laporta, really uber athletic guy in Iowa, Luke Musgrave, who's probably going to be going in the second round out of Oregon State, Tucker Kraft, who, by the way, is just getting mad love from the dynasty Twitter right now over the last week or two. You have him, and then of course Zach Kuntz, who had a perfect 10.0 relative athletic score from the NFL Combine. Out of all those tight ends, Mo, are there any other guys that strike your fancy for your rookie drafts?
And you're talking redraft then, right?
No, I'll ask you from a dynasty perspective for any of these tight ends. And I know landing spot's important, but you look at the talent of these guys, which is basically all we can go on at this point, besides Mayer and Kincaid, who seem to be the 1A and 1B or the 1 and 2 of this class. Anybody else in this class that you're kind of excited about when your dynasty rookie drafts come up?
I definitely have to do more research on the tight ends, but I do think Luke Musgrave, from what I've seen, he's someone who I think could be a very good pro. But yeah, I definitely feel like I have more work to do on on the tight ends.
Well, and in a class like this, it's so deep and it's so talented. I mean, landing spot is going to play more of a role this year, at least I think, than years past, because there are so many good tight ends in this class. We got to see where these guys end up, especially for FFPC tight end premium scoring. Mo, let's get to a couple of emails here that came in for you. First one, Bill in East Dundee, Illinois. Hey, Mo. Jacoby Myers. Is Jacoby Myers a buy or sell in Dynasty right now after he moved west to Las Vegas? Thank you, sir. That is Bill in East Dundee, Illinois. Bill, we appreciate the email. Your thoughts on Jacoby Myers from a Dynasty perspective, Mo?
Jacoby Myers is my highest owned player, actually.
Seriously.
You know, the thing about Jacoby Myers, nobody likes him. I don't know why nobody likes him.
The Raiders liked him. They still like him.
And that's one of the reasons I think he's a buy in all formats, really, because they seem to want him. You know, he seems familiar with that offense. I do think he was kind of miscast as a number one in New England. So I think he's going to be in a role that is better suited for him with the Raiders. And he catches a lot of passes. He demands targets, and I think that's going to be very helpful in the PPR format. And I would assume, I mean, when I think of his situation, it's better in every way than when he was in New England. New England was a mess last year. I think that the Raiders are going to be more competitive. There's going to be more opportunity to just score and earn points. So to me, Jacoby Myers is a buy. Solid. He's one of those players that's not going to win you many weeks or anything like that, but he's going to be a solid producer for your team. So
we have a follow-up on this question from Eric Balkman in Appleton, Wisconsin. Eric, why don't you go ahead? Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Let me ask you this about Devontae Adams then. If Jacoby Myers is going to have a really solid season because the difference of him playing in New England as opposed to Las Vegas is going to be significantly better, are you down on Devontae Adams at all this year? And you can answer this question either from redraft or dynasty.
I am a little bit down on him just because of Jimmy G. I don't think his skill set goes very well with what Devontae does. So I think that's actually one of the reasons I'm a little higher on Jacoby. I think it kind of plays to Jimmy G's skill set a little bit better. So
other email, and this will be the final email I have, Terp, and then I'll let you ask the last question for Mo. This comes from Jeff in Portland, California. I didn't realize there was a Portland, California. What's up, Mohamed? What kind of numbers can we expect from Hayden Hurst in Carolina? Thank you for the email, Jeff in Portland, California. Hurst put up some pretty good numbers in Cincinnati last year when he was competing for targets with one Jamar Chase, one T. Higgins, and one Tyler Boyd. Moves to Carolina. I don't know who he's going to be catching passes from. I think it's going to be Bryce Young. There's going to be no DJ Moore there. They have Adam Thielen, obviously, which is going to be a guy that will compete for targets with Hayden Hurst. But you look at, and I'll bring the ADP up, and you can answer this question here in the form of the Fantasy Pros ADP, what we have right now. Hayden Hurst, tight end 27 at the 1703 in Fantasy Pros ADP right now. Your thoughts on Hayden Hurst, Mo?
Tight end 27, that seems like a steal for Hayden.
Super juicy, right? Incredibly juicy.
Yeah, especially with a rookie quarterback coming in. I think that's probably a rookie quarterback's best friend, although he's a very talented rookie quarterback, assuming. But yeah, no, to me, that seems like a steal. I think he could be a solid tight end too. I don't think I'd get too crazy outside of that, but definitely seems like a good value at tight end 27. That's for sure.
Terp, last question is on you, my friend.
We ask this question to everybody. Name one player that you're just totally fading right now early in drafts, and then one player you're really high on right now.
So I don't know if I'd say I'm fading him, but I'll share him because it could ruin my fantasy season next year. But for me, I'm very concerned with Garrett Wilson, to be honest with you. And I know many people are just kind of assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to come in there and everything's going to be great for Garrett Wilson. But first of all, I don't know what's going on with this whole Aaron Rodgers thing.
I don't think they do either.
It's very it's starting with the darkness retreat and the list of demands. It's a very odd thing that's going on. So I don't like the situation to begin with. But even assuming that he does go there, let's assume that the team is better. I don't necessarily know if they'll be throwing as much as they were. They have a solid defense, solid run game. I know, being in the Detroit area, I've seen a lot of Aaron Rodgers games, and he tends to play slow. So I definitely am a little concerned about Garrett Wilson, just because I'm going to assume he's being drafted as a wide receiver 1. And I think he's got the potential to maybe come in a little lower than that. I don't think he's going to be a bust by any means, but I definitely feel like there's a little risk with drafting him as early as he's going. So,
and Mo, I've been talking about this on the show for months. Like, people have been, well, not months, but definitely weeks. People have been drafting Garrett Wilson as if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback in New York, and that probably will happen. But at the same time, like at this point, guys, like, he's wide receiver 8 in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now. He is going at the 203. In other words, if you have let's say on average, if you have the 108 and you don't take Garrett Wilson there, you ain't getting him in the second round, which to me is very, very high. So I'm with you on Garrett Wilson for sure, Mo. What about a player that maybe you have been targeting, or maybe a player you don't want to talk about because you don't want people to be onto him? Don't worry, nobody's watching, nobody's listening. You can share it with just me and Chirp. It's fine.
Well, I kind of already shared Jacoby Myers. I'm taking pretty much everywhere. I don't even know what his ADP is, but I know it's coming in pretty late. And boy, I'm trying to think of anyone else.
Well, I'll let you think about that for a second, just to bring everybody up to speed on Jacoby Myers. Mo's totally right. It's wide receiver 53 for his ADP right now. You can get him at the 10-11 turn in Fantasy Pros Championships right now. He's going behind Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going behind Sky Moore. He's going behind Odell Beckham, who just signed a contract with the Baltimore Ravens, having not played in the NFL since, I believe, 1959. And you have Jalen Hyatt, Rondale Moore, and Darnell Mooney going behind Myers right now. So, yeah, I'm definitely on board. Wide receiver 53. I always bring this up all the time. Joe Del Zanero says, Baker Boy, longtime high-stakes fantasy player, there's no such thing as a bad pick after the 10th round, and you could probably get this guy in the 11th round. It's not a bad pick at that point.
Well, that's good. I've been taking a lot of them, so that
yeah,
feel a little good. I guess one player that I am kind of high on is Deontay Johnson. I feel like just the idea that he had no touchdowns last year, it seems to be kind of just, that's not going to happen again, I would think. So I think he's kind of being undervalued. So that's one guy who I feel like I'm high on. I'm also a little higher on Chris Godwin, I think, than most people. I think he's an exceptional talent. And this is coming from probably the biggest Baker Mayfield hater. I can't stand Baker Mayfield. But I definitely feel like he can get the ball to Chris Godwin, and I feel like they have to throw the ball to somebody. And he's a great talent. So I feel like those are two players that I'm a little higher on than, I think the general consensus. So
Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 33 at the 607. That's behind Jameson Williams, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett. We'll see. I would imagine Jameson Williams dips behind Deontay Johnson shortly. Currently, Johnson is going ahead of Marquise Brown, Mike Evans, and Kadarius Toney. Chris Godwin going a little bit higher on the draft. He's behind Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's going ahead of Mike Williams, Jameson Williams, and Christian Kirk. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 28 at the 510. You've heard it here first from a guy who's won 5 FFPC league titles in his short career with the FFPC. We'll be anxiously awaiting to see what you do in your dynasty rookie drafts that you have picked up and acquired over the past couple of years, Mo. I certainly appreciate you carving out some time on this Friday night as we talk NFL rookies, NFL draft, and NFL free agency, everything that's going on right now. I know you've drafted a ton of teams early. I thank you for your insight on the show tonight. And I wish you good luck this season. And hopefully the ball follows your way and you're $1 million champion at the end of the season, man.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely. Anytime, man. That is Mohamed Elhussieny, a 5-time FFPC league champ, joining us here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Terp, it was such a great interview. I learned so much from Mo tonight. And as a result, very knowledgeable guy. And as a result, we are behind the 8 ball. We technically only have 4 minutes left in the show. We'll go a little bit of overtime tonight because I want to get your thoughts on some of the stuff that's going on right now. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go back to what we didn't get to in the first segment. Ron Rivera says that his team feels, quote, very comfortable with their quarterback situation. I know the Commanders fans are not very comfortable with the quarterback situation in Washington. Sam Howell, a guy who I probably unfairly disliked because he committed to Florida State and then he decided to decommit and go to North Carolina, leaving my beloved Knowles in the lurch. But he's been touted all offseason as the quarterback one for Washington. Jacoby Brissett is there, expected to be the backup. However, the Commanders had a meeting with Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker, who might be going in the first round of the NFL draft. We don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation, but let's talk about what we do know in this Washington team. We know Brian Robinson's going to be there. We know Antonio Gibson's going to be there. The list goes on here. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. Is the unproven situation at quarterback right now affecting anything what you're doing in your drafts with the Washington skill position players?
I don't think so. I mean, every fan base right now that has a quarterback situation like this they want everything with Lamar Jackson. They want Lamar Jackson, trade this, trade that to get him. And the Commanders are no different. But Sam Howell is a guy that I think has a ton of potential. They have a ton of weapons. New offensive coordinator with the enemy. There's a lot of things that are positive for that team right now. But the only thing that I worry about with him is the coach. Ron Rivera is a bonehead. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, I could easily see Jacoby Brissett starting and that team just being a fantasy disaster. I just feel like Hal has more upside. He's a more talented player by a landslide over Brissett. I feel like it's his team. I feel like everything they're saying is correct, and I hope they're correct because he's definitely a guy that, especially in Superflex, that I've been targeting a lot, as quarterback 3, quarterback 4 in some spots with, to me, ton of upside because those receivers, we talked about Dotson already, obviously, Terry McLaurin, Samuel's still there. The tight end position is a little, questionable, but it's a good draft for tight ends. Mm-hmm. Gibson, Brian Robinson. We're talking about a lot of talent on that team, especially offensively. So I'm a Hal guy. He's a guy that I hope starts, but the only thing I said that worries me is Ron Rivera. And if he struggles a little bit in preseason and camp, I could easily see him just saying, hey, Jacoby, you're going to start, and we'll figure it out.
The first player that is being drafted off the Commanders this year in FFPC drafts is indeed Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 26 at the 507, ahead of JSN, Godwin, and Mike Williams, right behind Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, and Michael Pittman. That is the decision you will have to make. All right, so I think this is interesting. Terp, I picked up a private dynasty team within the last week and a half, and I have Javonte Williams on this roster, and I'm looking for advice from you on what you think I should do. This team that I inherited has a chance at the playoffs this year. It's got 3 first-round picks. It's got a decent core, but a part of that core is Javonte Williams. George Payton, who is the GM of Denver, said this week that Williams will play at some point this season. They just don't know when, according to Chris Thomason on Twitter. Now, Peyton also said, who is heading up the Broncos draft, said that if the best player available when it comes to be their pick in the NFL draft is a running back, then running back could be a possibility there. Samaje Perine is officially the starter right now until Javonte Williams gets healthy. I don't really know what you should be doing with Javonte Williams. What do you think you should be doing in redraft for the Broncos backfield, given Williams' significant tears? I mean, it was a nasty injury. This was not a clean tear like Breece Hall had. This was a significant tear. How do you handle Javonte Williams in dynasty leagues, and what are you doing with the Broncos backfield in redraft leagues?
0.0 shares of Javonte Williams and will not have any. This injury is no joke. Like you said,
what would you
tear.
Terp, let me ask you this. If you had him, like if you're in my situation where you inherit him on a dynasty league, how many cents on the dollar would you be willing to get rid of him for? 70 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar?
I mean, probably something like that. But also, I mean, what are you getting for him? What's like a fair Javonte Williams?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now? Like he's almost a guy you just got to sit and hope that, people like me are wrong. But
would
like
you let me ask you this? Let me ask you this. If you got somebody's 2024 first, would you give him up straight up?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. As quick as possible.
Okay.
Because I don't – the injury, like you said, is no joke. It's a severe tear. It's not Breece Hall. Totally different injury. And just so many risks. Perine is a very solid veteran. Is he a superstar? No. They definitely will add somebody in the draft. And once they do that, I mean, there's a chance he doesn't play at all this year. Mm-hmm. So he's getting drafted way, way too high in drafts on a speculation of what? He might play 8 games. I mean, he's not going to start the season. And even if he does for some crazy, wild, way that he does, I don't see him being effective. Like I said, he's one guy that I took a stand and I will take a stand and I will own 0 shares. If he beats me, but I will not get sucked into that best ball or redraft. No matter the format, he will not be on any of my teams.
The YouTube chat is still humming right now. We'll go back to Fly's Beats here. He wants to know Jackson Smith and Jigba for the Lions question. So let me ask you this. So this is interesting. I don't think the Lions take him at 6, but they do have the 18th pick. They have some ammo to move up if they want. If he does move up, I mean, obviously this not only affects Jameson Williams, but it affects the redraft value of Amon-Ra St. Brown, doesn't it?
It affects everybody. And I would not – certain fits we talked about, like with Bijan Robinson on shows before. This is another one. Like Lions, stay away from the receiver position. I get what happened with Jameson Williams, but you just drafted him in the first round. Mm-hmm. Don't add a veteran if you have to. Draft a guy a little later. Maybe they could break out or something. And it's also a team that doesn't throw the ball a ton. So this fit wouldn't make any sense, but it's the Lions, man. Anything's possible. I would love for JSN's my clear-cut number 1 receiver in this draft. There's a lot of other fits I would like for him, and it's definitely not the Lions.
If Vince Papale is the number 1 Eagles name that is associated with the franchise, Dave Tripoli is number 2 with the Eagles. Your Eagles are picking 10th overall.
No.
Hold on. I've seen JSN mock to him. I've seen Bijan Robinson mock to your Eagles. Who do you want the Eagles to take, and who do you think they're going to take at 10?
Love Bijan Robinson. Number one rookie in this draft by a large, large margin. Love the player, but Howie Roseman does not draft running backs in the top 10 in the first round. He doesn't value the position, and in seriousness, he should not value the position. Look at all the teams that have won Super Bowls, made to Super Bowls. How many have had big-time running backs that they invested in? Look at some of the guys we just talked about. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, first-round capital players that can't get a contract. Derrick Henry signed a big deal. Christian McCaffrey signed a big deal. We can keep going on the list. They're not going to invest. O-line, D-line, rinse, repeat. If they want to take JSN, though, I'm intrigued by that. Make the offense even better. You just spend all the money on Hurts. But to me, it's O-line, D-line, trade back, keep getting picks, do exactly what you did last year, and just keep building the dynasty.
Let me ask you this from a fantasy perspective. And let's assume they don't draft Jackson Smith and Jigba, which they still could. But even without him, you have A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith. You have Dallas Goedert.
Yep.
You have Jalen Hurts. You have a pretty good offensive line there. Where
He's
is
the
the
best offensive
value?
line in football. Hold on. The
Best-
best offensive line in football.
Okay, but still, didn't they lose some to free agency?
They lost Isaac Salomalo. That's it. And they lost some depth, which is fair, but
So
they have the
they're
best
still the
offensive
best.
line coach.
Okay,
No worries.
all right, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not.
I think offensive line will be the pick, personally. I think they're going to take either the tackle from Ohio State or the tackle
Harris
from
Johnson.
Northwestern. Yeah, I
or
think one of
Peter
those two will be the
Skoronski.
player.
Okay,
I think it's, they could probably trade back a little bit and get them, but either way, I mean, it's hard to justify. Like Bijan Robinson, like I said, talented. Will he make the offense better? Of course he will. Is he a talented, extremely, to me, he's the most talented running back since Adrian Peterson.
mm-hmm.
But for an offense that doesn't throw the
Better
ball
than
out
Barkley?
there,
Better than Barkley, Terp?
I say yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Now, I guess my point here and what I sort of want to get to in regards to talking up the Eagles, offensive skill position players. I didn't mention running backs. With a talented offensive line and all these skill position players, there's got to be some love for an Eagles running back here. Where does it come from? Who is the Eagles running back that you want to be drafting right now?
I think it's just mix your shares in with Penny and Gainwell. I think they're going to draft somebody a little later, somebody to develop in there. There's talks of Trey Sermon coming out of the woodwork. I mean, somebody they picked up late last year, maybe getting some, if he's looking good early, I could see maybe like a deep pick there. But I like Gainwell a little bit better than Penny just because Penny, we all know with him, if he's on the field, he has top 10 running back potential. You tell me he's out there for 14 to 16 games, he is top 10 in that offense. You just saw what Miles Sanders did last year. The potential's there. And Penny's, in my opinion, a better player. But he can't stay healthy. And it's been proven that he can't stay healthy.
Right.
And with his health and where he's being drafted, it's just such a gamble. But if he can stay healthy, but he's never shown that he can.
Right.
So it's a question. And you saw Gainwell come on at the end of the season last year. He definitely has potential, and he definitely has a spot in that offense, I think, pretty secure. So I think mix your shares in with both those guys. Let's not – Jalen Hurts got paid. He's still going to get his rushing touchdowns. So –
And they didn't outlaw the whatever they're calling
it. They didn't outlaw his move, which is great.
So this is great for Hurts. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like where Hurts is being drafted right now, which is just crazy. If we ever said this a couple of years ago, quarterbacks would be so high. But with his rushing ability and then be able to still push him in the end zone, sky's still the limit. He's my number one quarterback coming into this year.
Kenneth Gainwell, running back 45 at the 11-10 right now. That's behind a pair of rookies, Devin Achane and Tyjae Spears. It's right ahead of Deontay Foreman. I agree. And it's ahead of Deontay Foreman and another rookie who I actually happen to like, Israel Abanikanda. Did we talk about Abanikanda? You like him too,
guy,
right?
I was a big fan of him. Drafted him a ton early, but he's getting pushed up. And
yes, he is. Absolutely.
You gotta worry. Like we're gonna talk Kendre Miller, the guy from TCU was hurt. And if he wasn't hurt, he'd probably be going higher. I mean, he didn't really do much in the combine, in his pro day. So he's but he's starting to get, the week before you always see these guys who are getting jumped, he's going to be a 3-down back. He's got a top 30 visit, I believe, with Tampa Bay. He had. I mean, these guys are always a worry because, of course, but where were they early on? Like, why are they just being talked about the week before?
Yeah.
Questions. There's so many running backs that all look the same, and one of them are going to be good. The rest of them are going to be bad spots. And, there's guys, Roschon Johnson's probably my favorite. Miller's another guy that I like a lot. I've been drafting a lot lately. But like you said, all these guys are all talented kids coming out. They were the studs in college. But the NFL is a different animal. And I don't see a lot of these guys day one being, instant impacts with their team.
The last thing I want to bring up, and I want to get to that Kendre Miller email since we teased it, but before we get to that, let's stick in the NFC East. Giants GM Joe Schoen said, quote, "Nothing's changed since we talked at the owners' meetings," end quote, when he was asked about Saquon Barkley's contract status. Art Stapleton, who covers the Giants, posted this on Twitter. When he was asked about Barkley potentially reporting to training camp, quote, "You'd have to ask him. I don't know what his plans are. I haven't talked to him in 3 weeks." Now, Barkley is a guy who was franchise tagged after the Giants decided that they were going to get a deal done with Daniel Jones. Barkley does not have to report until he signs the tag. Terp, Barkley's coming off a fantastic season. He is currently the running back 5 at the 112, neck and neck with Bijan Robinson, who obviously we'll see where he ends up. But Saquon Barkley at the 112, would you, knowing this, would you be willing to risk your first-round pick, or at least your early second-round pick on Saquon Barkley, or are you more likely to wait and draft a running back like Kenneth Walker, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, so on and so forth? Your thoughts on Barkley after hearing this?
I'm worried about Barkley this year. I mean,
Now, hold on. Let me couch this a little bit. Are you worried about Barkley from the standpoint of he's been worked really hard and he's trying to get a second contract?
Workload.
Or are you worried about Barkley just reporting it all?
No, what are his options? Sit out, because they're not trading him. So to me, he's going to sit out as long as he can, and he'll come back. And it's the same song and dance with all these running backs, unless one of them one time just makes a statement and sits out for the season. But what you saw that with Le'Veon Bell, how'd that work out? So Barkley, I have no worries whatsoever about not playing. They're not going to trade him. What's a value for a running back who needs to get signed to a contract right now? What team's lining up to do that? You heard rumors of Derrick Henry, possibly getting traded. That market never happened. Barkley's a similar player with the wear and tear. Obviously, he's coming off a great season, but no worries. He's not a guy that I'm personally taking in the first round. If he comes to the second, and people get worried about this, of course. I mean, I'll have some shares, but he's not a guy that I'm very, very high on this year, especially where he's being drafted.
Let me ask you this. This will be the final email we have, or the only email we're going to get to tonight. We'll get to the rest coming up next week. I'll tell you what's going on with our show next week. It's pretty exciting. And if you are a fan of the show, you know exactly what's going on with the show next week. Okay. This is something you alluded to. Kurt in Tulsa Kurt wants to know, what are the chances TCU's Kendre Miller becomes a 3-down back in the NFL? Terp, I have seen a lot of love in the conversations I've had with high stakes players and dynasty fantasy football pundits out there for Bijan Robinson, for Roschon Johnson, for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet, Zach Evans even. Kendre Miller is a little bit polarizing. Your thoughts on what he could be in the NFL? Is he destined to just be some sort of backup? Or in a deep running back class, is this a sleeping giant, a guy that could be a bell cow if the bell is rung and he needs to do so?
I think he's a sleeping giant. I think he's a very talented kid. I mean, he would be a perfect fit for the Philadelphia Eagles. A guy that can develop a little bit behind, Penny, if he stays on the field, behind Gainwell. Obviously, Boston Scott's still there. He'd be a guy that would be a good target for a team like that. He obviously can get lost in the shuffle in certain spots. Obviously, fit is most important next week. Mm-hmm. But right now, do I think he could be a third down? 100%.
Okay.
He's running back 4 of the draft.
And he is right now in Fantasy Pros drafts, he is going behind. Oh, let me ask you this. Okay. So he's going behind Deontay Foreman, Kareem Hunt, and Elijah Mitchell. He's going ahead of Jalen Warren, Jeff Wilson, Ezekiel Elliott. But a guy he's going behind, this is redraft. He's going behind him by about a third of a round, 4 picks. Who would you rather have, Terp, right now, if you're drafting in a dynasty draft? Would you rather have Israel Abanikanda or would you rather have Kendre Miller?
That's tough because I like both.
I like them both too. I'm going to lean towards Abanikanda.
I'm going to lean toward Miller.
Miller, okay. Why now? Why Miller?
I think it's close. I think you're pulling hairs, but right. I think Miller's a slight lean for me.
And listen, you know me, my brain is mush. I get shifted. I'm like, I get shifted. So I have made dynasty decisions based on the last guest we have had on this show prior to my dynasty rookie draft.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
I have Instagram videos posted of where I asked my son, hey, should I go with Devin Singletary or JJ Arcega-Whiteside? Hey, should I go with Michael Gallup or, whoever I was deciding? You know what I mean? I'm so wishy-washy.
And then you look back at him, you're just like, geez.
Oh, my son is 2 for 2. He is 2 for 2 on.
Hopefully, he didn't pick JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
No, he took Singletary that
year. Right now.
He took Singletary that year. I'm trying to remember who the Gallup pick was. I'd have to go back and look at who was going at that pick, but I do remember when I look back at him, even Gallup in the situation he's in, Gallup was the correct pick. It was somebody horrible, and he nailed it. So I might be going to him again this year. I might be going to you, Terp, because you came through tonight to co-host this show with me, and you did it with great aplomb. I thank you for it. We will continue to follow you on Twitter at Dave Turp, and good luck in all your leagues this year. You and I are going to hook up. I know you and Aiden LaCory have already done some best ball live coverage on the FFPC YouTube channel.
We got a bunch of stuff coming up soon.
And you'll
pro drafts.
Yes, exactly. And you'll be on coming up in, we're still a ways away, but 3 months away. But it'll be you, me, Farrell, doing all the pros versus Joe's drafts again this year. So that'll be fun. Enjoy your weekend. Safe travels to Los Angeles tomorrow, my friend. Thank you so much for hopping aboard. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Have a great one.
You got it. Dave Turpoli, ladies and gentlemen. The man, the myth, legend. You follow him on Twitter at Dave Turp. Great guy that we have fill in every so often when we need to here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. We are running short on time. I do want to thank Mohamed Elhussieny for popping on tonight, the 5-time FFPC League champ, Dave Turpoli, the FFPC, Rob Bryson, of course, each and every one of you. Special programming announcement. Next Wednesday, we will have a show. Yeah, that's right. We're not going to do a show on Friday. You guys are watching the NFL draft. There's no reason for us to do a show and bring a guest on. So we're going to bring a guest on Wednesday. It's going to be 13-time FFPC champion Steve Sackled. He's going to come on. He's going to talk Dynasty. He's going to talk redraft. We're going to have a lot of fun at 10/9 Central on Wednesday this coming week. Now, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show was awesome this past Thursday, and you can watch it back on the FFPC YouTube channel because we did a 4-hour mashup of shows. A meeting between the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show and the Dynasty Nerds program on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, on the Better Sports Network. It was myself and Garrett Price. We did 4 hours worth. We had a lot of great guests on. We had Shane Hallam on. We had Theo Greminger on. We had Britt Flynn on from Fantasy Alarm. We had on Rich Dotson from Dynasty Nerds. We had a ton of guests on. We covered every single position, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. We also did a full 2-round NFL mock draft, followed by a full 2-round FFPC fantasy Dynasty Fantasy Football mock draft in the 4th hour. We covered a lot of ground. Go back and watch that at where you're watching this right now, youtube.com/FFPC Fantasy. And you can check out the 4-hour episode that myself and Garrett Price did. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. It was exhausting, but man, it was so great to get that out there. So check that out. Now, next week, normally we're on 7 to 9 on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. We're not doing that because of the NFL draft. But you can still consume content on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show next week. It won't be the HSFF show, as you know, but I will be anchoring coverage as the lead host on Friday night from 7 until 9, along with Andrew Cooper, the Moose, Mark Malusis, and other guests that are going to be coming on in that 2-hour span. We're going to see where these running backs go, some of the receivers, some of the tight ends. That is all bettersports.com, all the Better Sports social media channels, and, of course, all the FFPC social media channels as well. Go to myffpc.com. Click on Dynasty Leagues and adopt a Dynasty Orphan right now with the FFPC. Discounted teams are available from the $250 level on up to the $1,250 level. You can get teams as low as $1. That's myffpc.com, myffpc.com, and take a chance. Try to win the FFPC Fantasy Pros Championship. First time we're ever doing this, $1 million, only $350 to register. That's at myffpc.com. If you register by June 1st and draft by June 15th, you are going to get a free $35 league credit. If you want to do it up to 3 times, you're going to get 3 league credits. That's over $100 in free FFPC teams when you register for the Fantasy Pros Championship at myffpc.com. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. Your weekend officially starts now, and while I'd love to play the outro, I cannot do it tonight because I'm having some computer issues, so I apologize for that. So we won't have an official outro. I do want to say this tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I brought this up on one of my other shows today. I want to tell you about my old friend, Brian. My old friend, Brian, is 3 years older than me. When I was a young kid, he used to come over when my parents would go out at night, and he would babysit me and my 2 younger brothers. He was an awesome guy. We loved him coming over. He would, at the time I was being babysat for, I was like 9, 10, 11. He was like 14, 15, 16, whatever it was. and he was kind of getting sick of his baseball and football and basketball card collection at that point. So he would make trades with us, and we would get insane deals. He would give us great cards. He was also instrumental in the development of the Balkman family hand soccer tournament. It was a sport that we came up with where we would play it in our basement, me, my two brothers, and Brian. We would play it in our basement. You'd play it on your knees, and you could only use your hands in soccer. We formulated, this was way back in the late 80s, early 90s, and we formulated a gigantic tournament where every single country in the world qualified for, and we'd play out the tournament. Brian was also instrumental in figuring out the rules, the layout of the field, and the goals, like what would count, what would not. He was a guy I have not talked to in probably 30 years. I got an email from my mother this morning, and I found out he actually was killed by a drunk driver this past week, this past Wednesday. Was hit head on by somebody who was obviously intoxicated and hit his car head on. Car rolled, hit, it was lit on fire, obviously exploded, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. He had a 14-year-old son in the car who was in critical condition at a local hospital and has been at critical condition at a hospital for 9 days. He's expected to be released sometime this weekend. We don't know officially on that. He leaves behind a wife and not only his 14-year-old son, but his 12-year-old daughter. Brian was a great guy to me. He was a guy I always looked forward to hanging out with. I played baseball with his brother, Dan, who was one of the best pitchers, probably the best pitcher I ever played with, not only against, but as a teammate as well. And his dad, John, was my coach for 3 or 4 years playing baseball growing up. I remember his family really well. I've been praying for his family to try to make it through this difficult time. And it just totally sucks that something like this has to happen to such a nice guy, such a great person as Brian was. And I just want to do 2 things here as we sign off tonight. Number one, understand that life is short. Understand that the last time you see your family or friends, it might be the last time you ever see them. My last time to see Brian was like 30 years ago. And I've grown apart from him, obviously, but I still wish I could say goodbye, and I can't anymore. And I made my peace with that. But I don't think his family has yet. And so I want you to pray for him. I want you to send out positive vibes. I want you to, let them know that there are people thinking about them. And I want you to understand that Brian Bender is a really special guy to me and a lot of other people. I found out through a text chain today with some of my other buddies who I played baseball with against his little brother, that Brian also babysat them back in the day. So he babysat a lot of us and watched us when our parents were out at night. He was a really cool guy. He was a very kind-hearted individual, and he's gone way too soon, and he leaves behind a wife and 2 kids that are going to be robbed of a lot of memories that they can't make with him anymore. And that sucks, and it is what it is, and we got to make our peace with it. So prayers up to Brian's family, prayers up to everybody who has been in a similar situation in your life. Hug and kiss everybody that are close to you, friends, family. Tell them you love them because life is short, and be a Brian. Go out there and be a nice person and be the kind-hearted person that he was and the way he lived all 46 years on this earth. And I think the world will be better for it. Rest in peace, Brian, and we'll talk with you all next Wednesday. Thanks for watching, everybody.